So our objective is the time to prepare for an emergency is not during the emergency. In this class, we'll teach you how to prepare for a disaster as well as implementing a long-term food storage plan and how it could be integrated into everyday activities. And after this presentation, you should be able to define what an emergency, what self-reliance and storage means, identify areas where you and your family can begin or improve your preparedness level for both emergencies and long-term storage, and implement a plan focused on lifetime efforts. So in D&C 21, 5 and 6, it says, "For his word ye shall receive as if from mine own mouth, in all patience and faith. For by doing these things, the gates of hell shall not prevail against you. Yea, and the Lord will disperse the powers of darkness from before you and cause the heavens to shake for your good and his name's glory." And that is in reference to our prophet. So when our prophet speaks, truly, he's speaking for the Lord.
Okay, everybody. When we talk about an emergency, what is an emergency? Is it a fire, earthquake, flood, tsunami, tornado? What is it? It's a little different for everybody. We know that there's hardships in the world. We have loss of jobs. We have physical ailments. We have being evicted from a home, or obviously the latest thing that we've learned about COVID-19, a lot of places had to shut down because they could not support keeping their businesses open. So consequently, a disaster does not have to be only by a major catastrophe. It's something that happens sometimes on a daily basis to us that we don't have control over. So when we share emergency preparedness, we need to share to be ready for all emergencies, all disasters. We need to start preparing together as a family, as a neighborhood, as a community. So let me promise you this. If on my block, let's say, if I am the only one that has 1 year food storage, would I consciously shut my doors and not feed the rest of my neighbors? How about the community that was surrounded? Not everybody is on the same plateau of preparedness. May it be food storage, may it be disaster preparedness, may it be emergency preparedness. So we need to be cognizant so that we're prepared as an individual, because not everybody in our state boundaries are our families. Some of them are individual. Some of them are families with one or both spouses. Some of them are from various faiths that may and may not know about preparedness. And in our community, when, like we say, when one suffer, we all suffer. So let me share with you the 3 important preparedness for our family. We need to develop a communication plan. We need to know how to communicate with our family when a disaster strikes, when an emergency happens. We need to develop an evacuation plan. May it be evacuating our home or sheltering in place, because sometimes we also need to, in a winter time, if our home is still viable, shelter in place. And of course, we need to determine what to put in an emergency supply kit. So today, hopefully, we're going to share with you many assets and aspects of what an emergency is to you, what kind of supplies we need to have, and how we need to communicate. So one other thing is, if any of you right now in our group could tell me when the next earthquake is going to happen, or the next flood is going to happen, or when I'm going to lose my job, okay, let's not go that far. Or I'm going to get sick. Okay, let's not go that far either. And if we're separated, and if this thing happens during the week, how do we get together? Do we get to our phone book, which we don't have any longer, to our rotary phone, which we don't have any longer, and be able to communicate if I'm at home with my children at school, or if I'm in my car on the road when my wife is shopping, am I going to be able to communicate with her? Or am I at work, or I'm out of town? How do we communicate? So I need you to write down this site, which is called bereadyutah.gov, because a lot of the answers in everything I'm going to be presenting, it's on this state bereadyutah.gov site, and there's a lot of answers, even though some of the answers for this question of communication, and to give you a handout, I'm going to be sending it to you so we don't take too much time today. So what is an emergency supply kit? What do you have in your emergency supply kit? A lot of people say food and water. Some people say tools. Some people say clothing, first aid kit. How long is it supposed to last? So your emergency supply kit should last you between 3 to 7 days. The 6 basic elements is correct. It's water, food, first aid, clothing and bedding or whatever, tools such as a radio, may it be battery powered or solar powered, and tools to shut off your utilities, and specialized items. So I have heart issues. If I have my 72-hour kit and I don't have 3 days to 7 days of spare pills in my 72-hour kit, I'm going to be in a heap of trouble. So this kit should be personalized to your needs, and not something that you find in an internet site that says, this kit is perfect for you. It's $325. Not necessarily, because that kit has a generic thing in there that may and may not sustain you in a disaster. So, how many of you have used an extinguisher? How many of you have an extinguisher in your house? Good job, you guys. So, have you played with your extinguisher before? Have you made a little fire somewhere on the concrete, of course, in a confined, maybe piece of tin or something, and tried to put it out? So I would recommend, if you have a tool, know how to use it. You know, you probably have heard the acronym PASS. It's pull, aim, squeeze the handle, and sweep. Don't push straight forward to the fire. So hopefully, if you have one of these, and let me tell you, once you discharge an extinguisher, then you have to refill it, correct? But sisters, and I know there's a few brothers in our group, if you don't practice it, you won't know how to use it. In a disaster, sometimes you only have one shot. So think about that. The most important thing in preparedness, in family preparedness, is to learn as a family and to practice how to exit our homes to the regrouping spot properly. Each of your homes, some of them, have 2 exits. There's a window and there's a doorway to the front door. I would like you to at least have a plan made with your family. Again, I cannot stress enough to have this plan put together as a family. If there's only one of you, you're the family. So put the plan together for yourself. If you have adults, children, don't rely on them being adults. Practice with them this plan and prepare this plan together so that you all be able to survive whatever this is. And if we have children, we need to have this exit strategy planned together as a family so that if we have younger children or grandchildren that are staying at our house, which Lena and I are privileged to have so many sleepovers with our young kids, so that they could come over and sleep with us safely, and if something happens, we could evacuate together safely. So please plan one of those. So when you have a plan together and you don't practice it periodically, that plan is null. It's worth nothing. I've been doing emergency management and homeland security for over 30 years. Something happened in California about 20 years ago, which caused some riots, and there were a lot of lives lost. And when the chief of police was asked, "Do you have a plan?" he answered, "Yes, it's 600 pages long plan." And when he was asked, "Do your people know where that plan is? And have you practiced that plan to know how to respond?" Unfortunately, the answer was no. So what good does it do to have a 600-page plan or to have one-page plan as a family if you don't practice it every 6 months? And if our children don't get quizzed on how to evacuate, how to have a drill, a lot of people say, yeah, we know how to have a drill and run out of the house safely according to our plan. How about, have you tried it in the dark? Have you tried it in a panic? Can you know how to crawl out your house into the gathering place that you planned if you don't practice it? So conducting home drills and evacuation plan and going over your plan, going over your 72-hour kit, hopefully is not a huge suitcase like that picture depicts. And if you have clothing in there, do they still fit? And the food that's inside there, is it still edible? So brothers and sisters, just having a plan, just having the kit does not help. We all, as a family, have a role and a responsibility. Learn how to turn off your utility. Learn how to use a fire extinguisher. Develop a plan not only for you, for your children, for your pets, for everything else that is valuable to you. And assembling an emergency kit is more important. How many of you know how to shut off your gas from a gas meter? How many of you know where the gas meter is? How many of you know where the main shut off for your power utility on the outside of the house? Of course, you know where the breaker box is inside the house, right? So learn where some of these things are. And please remember what I'm going to say now. If you don't smell it, if you don't hear it, if you don't see it, please don't turn it off. Especially when it comes to the gas. Once you shut it off on the main line, you are not supposed to turn it back on. The professional is supposed to come, check your house for any leakages, and then turn the gas back on. We know Questar Gas, Rocky Mountain Power are so busy, they're going to be there the next day and take care of you. That's a myth, brothers and sisters. Please, if you don't smell it, you don't hear it, you don't see the sparks or whatnot, don't shut it off, especially if it's wintertime. So when we schedule on our calendar to replace the reason I'm saying this is funny, but I shouldn't be laughing. 2 weeks ago, one of my coworkers said to me, Hagop, You've taught me about 4 years ago to have a CERT, the CERT program. And in that CERT program, you told me how to have at least 255-gallon drums worth of water for emergencies. How often do I rotate that water? I said, how long did you fill those tanks up? He said, 4 years ago. Please rotate that water at least every 6 months. Otherwise, you're going to use that water to only flush the toilet. Or you're going to put so much chlorine in it that it's not going to be worth drinking. And again, as I said, test your fire detectors, fire extinguishers, walk around your house, see what's new and what's changed. So if you need to evacuate, what do you take with you? Look at this picture. Well, those of you who know me, I am, attached to this car. Obviously, it's a Fiat. I drive a Fiat, okay? So what do you take with you? Your family, if you need to evacuate, or your 72-hour kit, or the love of your car. You take your car with you. So I would say all three. The car is good for you to shelter in if it's wintertime. Your family, how can you leave without these cute faces? And of course, you better have your 72-hour kit. And you see, this is not a typical 72-hour kit. I'm going to ask you, and one of you please respond by looking at this picture. What do you see that you don't usually have in your 72-hour kit? And it has a Spanish ramification into it. Okay, come on, one of you should have seen it by now. If you know how to say number in Spanish, you would have seen it by now.
Card games, Uno?
Yes, ma'am, thank you very much. Because in a disaster, children get very scared and very worried. You need to get their minds off of it by having some game of a sort to keep their minds off of what's happening. So please put some games, and besides the normal food that you like to put in your 72-hour kit, some hard candy. Sugar calms your nerves down quite a bit, and hard candy lasts quite a bit longer with children. If you need to shelter in place, there's quite a few things you need to do. You need to first make sure the outside atmosphere does not come into your house. So you need to shut your air conditioning system, turn off the intake from the outside, tape your windows and doors so that it becomes safer climate on the inside, and make sure your house is prepared. There is no air contamination. There is a place that you could move around your food that you're going to be able to eat without turning on your gas if you have gas stove or what have you. So I will send you some more information. And obviously, the same thing goes in your whole neighborhood. And this is a tip that we all need to live, that we are not in a cocoon ourselves. If you are ready, if your neighbor is not, what good does it do for you to be ready alone? So we need to reduce anxiety and injury and damage to our property. I'm just skimming through it. Talk with your neighbors and your local emergency personnel. Know what your neighbors could contribute to a disaster, maybe food, tools, equipment, knowledge. Knowledge is the most important thing. If they're doctors, nurses, plumbers, computer scientists, philosophers, I don't care what, they could help us in a disaster, I promise you. So there is a couple of myths that I like to slay. And this is from Dr. Eric Noe. He's an MD and MPhD. He says the myth in disasters bringing out the worst in people is not correct. The fact is, the majority of people respond spontaneously, without thinking, and generously to help one another. So, brothers and sisters, why should we wait for a disaster before we know our neighbors, before we become their friends, before we could help them know we're no different than they are? We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, and we believe that we are all brothers and sisters, and we believe in the same God that created us and made this planet beautiful for us to live in. So, Lena's going to take over right now, and I want you to remember physical and spiritual preparedness also brings in the food storage and the self-reliance to make it a complete triangle. Any questions so far? Whoever's asleep, please wake up and ask a question. Just kidding. Here you go. Here's Lena.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about self-reliance, self-sufficient, self-supporting, self-sustaining, self-governing. Sounds very self-oriented, doesn't it? But what it is what does it mean to be self-reliant? When we are self-reliant, we use the blessings and the abilities God has given us to care for ourselves and our families and find solutions to our own problems. As we become self-reliant, we are also better able to serve and care for others. The Lord wants us to become both spiritually and temporally self-reliant. So these are the areas: health, education, employment, home storage, and finances. You could do a whole school course on each one of these. So in the limited amount of time, Sister Ballard has asked me to talk about home storage. So as this is our focus, if we want to define it, it says to accumulate or put away for future use. Don't those jars look beautiful? Years ago, our mothers, ourselves, our grandmothers, we would, or we still do, put food away when there is plenty for later when there is not. And that's something that I fear that we are losing and must put in the back of our minds, because our lives have gotten more complicated. We don't have time to do these, but how can we build our storage and address these concerns that we have? That's what we're going to talk about. So where are we going to start? How are we going to do this? We're going to observe, stand back and look. We're going to assess. We're going to plan. We're going to talk about deals, and we're going to pray. So this is a quote from the church's website: long-term supply. Gradually build a 1-year supply of food that can last for a long period of time. Focus on foods such as wheat, rice, pasta, oats, beans, and potatoes that can last 30 years or more when properly packaged and stored in a cool, dry place. I wasn't done.
Sorry.
That, like I said, is from the church's website, but I have a few other ideas. Do you feel overwhelmed? I would feel overwhelmed if I read that I would have to have that for 30 years, things that can last for 30 years. How many of you have eaten anything that's 30 years old? I remember going to a preparedness fair many years ago that our ward put on, and the bishop's wife had 30-year-old pear that she had dehydrated and was giving out samples for people. And you know what it tasted like? It tasted like 30-year-old pear. It tasted pretty awful. I think we need, I'm not trying to go against what the church says, but I think we need to make smaller goals so we don't feel overwhelmed and be able to ultimately get that 30-year or being prepared for a year's supply. That's your slide.
So let me talk to you a little bit about supplies. So Lena just mentioned about 30-year storage. Recently, after the earthquake, as I mentioned, I work for West Valley City Emergency Management, and we've learned I have a lot of MREs. So we thought, okay, there was the earthquake, let's be vigilant and live like as if this is going to be a week-long affair, and the earthquake aftershocks is going to make more damages or whatnot, which I'm so grateful it didn't. So I opened up some of these MREs that I purchased about 10 years ago. Again, brothers and sisters, if you are not used to it, it would taste like the 30-year-old pear. It would feel like a 30-year-old food. But then I also had some freeze-dried packages that I've also purchased some 15 years ago. I opened some of those up, and of course you have to hydrate them, right? So I put the water in, and it had one of those heating elements and whatnot, and we started tasting them. There was 20 of us. Out of 20 of us, 2 of us said, okay, I guess I could live on this. But 18 of us said, please go and order us a pizza or something. This food sucks. So my question for you is, again, why would you store something that you are not used to cooking or eating, or your body's not used to it? So we're Armenians, Lena and I. We eat a lot of bulgur wheat, we eat a lot of wheat, so our body's used to it. So when I make dishes that made out of wheat and share it with some of my friends, automatically they have a tummy ache or something because they go, wow, this is so heavy. My body's not used to. So that's the case in point. If you're not used to it, you're going to hurt yourself more during a disaster or an emergency, or when you're ready to use that food storage, food supply. So a year's food supply is a realistic goal if items are stored in an orderly manner and rotated. So this is a beautiful grocery store, and in a perfect world, it looks nice. But what happens in a disaster? When this happens to the grocery store, it is not time for you to start planning your food storage, because they won't have enough of it, and then they start selling it in rations, so they don't have enough of it for you to have at home. So my other question is, how safeguarded is your food storage? Do you have friends that come and eat with you? So this is not a myth, my dearest brothers and sisters. This is obviously a little extreme that mice are eating your Cheerios, but how about weevils? How about ants? The little things. I know your house is very clean, but things like this do happen. When there's construction around your home or in the neighborhood or in the area, and their home is being disturbed, they're going to go somewhere. They come in our neighborhoods and they start infesting our food storage. So my dearest brothers and sisters, I cannot emphasize enough, safeguard your food storage in a proper way so that you don't have issues like that.
So this is something that's, excuse me, this is something that has been, I've asked all the time, is I don't have room. I don't have room to put it anywhere. So this is where our creativity needs to come in. It'd be awesome if we all had wonderful cupboards like this to put our food storage in, but a lot of times we don't. A lot of times we have to put it underneath the bed. And sometimes we even have to ask other people to store it for us. So maybe you ask your parents or your grandparents if they have room. Most of them have large homes. In other words, people have moved out and they have this large home so that you can store your food there. You need to be a little creative, and when you are, you can have wonderful places to store. So not having room to store is not a legitimate reason not to have food storage. So where are we going to start? We're going to make a list of what your family eats now. You're going to observe, you're going to see what is it that really is a hit for your family? What is it that isn't so much a hit? How is your menu, the food you feed your family, is it balanced and nutritious, or can there be other things? When we had young children at home, once a week, maybe twice a week, I would purposely make something that they didn't particularly like. Not that they hated it, but they didn't particularly like it, so that they get used to eating things that are not really their favorite. So study the nutritional value. That's the RD in me, the dietitian in me. We just don't want to fill up stomachs. We want to fill up stomachs with good stuff, because that's what we are made out of. You are what you eat. Excuse me. So once you observe, then you see what your menu's like. Then you compare it to the health food pyramid and see where it can benefit, where your family can benefit. Then we're going to start using that food. So as we buy, we're going to use it. The mentality, if you take only one thing away from this, this presentation as far as food storage goes, the mentality that I am done should never happen. It is a constant thing. It's a constant working at that we need to do as a family. So this is a recipe for hadig. Hadig is made out of wheat, very easy to make. 2 cups of wheat, 8 cups of water in a crock pot. You put it in when you go to bed at night. In the morning, you'll wake up and your wheat will be soft and ready to eat. And then you just add anything you want to it. You add sugar, you add honey, you add raisins, nuts, M&Ms, dried fruit, fresh fruit, anything. And that is a good food to have. A good way to start using that wheat so your body gets used to it. So basic, 8 cups water, 2 cups wheat in the crock pot overnight. The rest is all up to you.
So remember, I talked about the necessity to have water storage. So we have all this nummy food. We have all this wheat, the rice, and everything that you have in your storage room. But we don't have water because of an earthquake, or forget the earthquake. The water company or the construction company hit a water main, and we are out of water for 3 or 4 days, 5 days, a week. It happened recently in Sandy, if you remember. Somebody hit a water main and they didn't have water for almost a week. So you have to remember how much water you need per person, where to store the water, and how easy it is for you to be able to use it. So we talked about 55-gallon drums. So if you have a 55-gallon drum, which needs to be in a dark place as possible, and the drum needs to be pretty dark as possible so that the water itself does not contaminate it by seeing sunlight, then you need to have a way of extracting that water. So having a 55-gallon drum and not having a pump, it's a little difficult to use that water. So then you also need to make sure you have a way of transporting that water. So don't put all your eggs in one basket saying I have 3, 4, 55-gallon drums of water in my garage. If the garage collapses, do you have any smaller containers for you to be able to grab and run with? Think of those things. So I'm going to send you also information and how much water per person per day, how much chlorine you're supposed to put in there if the water was contaminated. So again, all that information will come to you shortly.
So when we're trying to reach that goal of a year's supply, we need to be smart and we need to set short-term goals. And a lot of times we think, oh, this is so small. What difference would this make? So how many of you know the story of the compounding penny? The story of the compounding penny, when I heard it, I was just baffled. So the way that goes is, I will give you
$1
million or a penny. And if you take the penny every day for 30 days, I will double it. Which would you like? Well, it's kind of like a no-brainer, at least for me. I was like, I'll take the $1 million. But if you take the penny and if every day for 30 days it's compounded, meaning doubled, it comes over $3 million. And I was like, no, there's no way. But it is true. So the small things add up to something big. Remember years ago when we used to be able to buy a gumdrop or a gum ball with a penny, and now you can't? They don't have those anymore. But the point being is, nothing is too small. Every effort made to going forward is an effort that helps us to attain our goal. So deals. Look out there and see what are deals. I talked about canning. A lot of us don't do canning anymore. And so you're going to get your food from the deals in the stores. If you do canning and you have a garden, wonderful. If you don't and you buy from a farmer's market, that's wonderful too. Look outside the box and see what works for you. If it works for me, that doesn't necessarily mean it works for you. So one thing, it's really, really important to do your plans in the right order, in the right way, as well as doing it together as a family. So remember, your food supply is dynamic, meaning it's constantly changing. There's constant in and out. That's the mentality we need to have. The mentality that, oh, I have my year's supply, I'm done, is not a productive mentality, because that means that you are not on your guard. It's important to keep focusing on it, to use it, to add to it, to see what's in it every once in a while, assess it, and together with your family, you'll be able to accomplish that goal. So, and the biggest point that I can make is to ask the Lord's blessing to help us accomplish it. And you do it as a family. So when your kids hear you pray that the Lord, asking the Lord to bless your efforts, they will be on board and understand it also. And together you can work in accomplishing this goal, this 1 year supply of this living, breathing food that is going to nourish your family. I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anything worse than saying to a child, I don't have anything to feed you with.
So the Lord loves our efforts, because efforts bring rewards that can't come without it. That's what President Nelson said. So, brothers and sisters, you think that if your offering is not quite perfect, it is not acceptable. I tell you, however, that if you have done your best, which you usually do, your humble offering, whatever it may be, will be acceptable and pleasing to the Lord.
And President Uchtdorf shared this thought that I'm going to end with, which is sometimes in life we become so focused on the finish line that we fail to enjoy the journey. Enjoy this journey of being prepared, whether it's for an emergency and you're putting a 24-hour or a 48-hour or a week kit together, or whether it's food storage. Enjoy the journey together as a family.
So that's the end of the presentation. And those of you who might know, these are Armenian cucumbers and some tomatoes and some flowers and some herbs for us to share with you as your brother and sister in the gospel and in life. And obviously it's a question mark with a heart. Do you have any questions that we may answer them the next few seconds? And I'm going to stop sharing the video and come back alive with you. Questions, comments, or whoever is supposed to say the closing prayer to give us the closing prayer.
Can I ask you guys one thing? What I've been working on right now is my wheat storage, and so I bought a wheat grinder and stuff in case the power is out. It's, you know, a hand grinder and stuff, but you know, we use a lot of breads for sandwiches or, you know, other things. And I like your recipe. I'm glad you gave me that, because I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't know if I can grind that much wheat every day to make a loaf of bread. What do you guys do about that? I mean, for a year's supply, that's a lot of wheat and a lot of grinding wheat to make bread.
So wheat is an amazing thing in that it lasts a long time. They found wheat in the pyramids in Egypt that is still very nutritious, and you can digest it. It's edible. So wheat will last a long time. And also it's being obedient to the word of wisdom, because the Lord tells us that it's necessary. But like you said, we're limited in on what we can use it with. And with wheat, I wouldn't worry too much. I would use it as much as you could, but it will last a long time, as long as it's stored correctly. Hopefully that answered your question. The hadik recipe, that could be adjusted to do other things. I've heard of people throwing wheat into soup to eat, cooking it through their soup. It's an experimentation. It's what your family will eat. That's what's important.
So that was a good question, and maybe we'll put some of our recipes, part of what we're going to share with you in my presentation when we download it all. And that way you could see we use wheat for many other things besides just bread. So that gives you an idea, and that way your body could get used to some of these other ways to use these proteins.
We use a lot of bulgur wheat, which is wheat that has been coarsely ground and parboiled and then dried in the sun. And Armenians use a lot of that. So I'll have a couple of recipes for you for that.
Hey, Jake and Lena, can you tell us a little bit more about putting Clorox in water? Or chlorine in water, I mean.
So that is correct, Jana. It is Clorox. So it's bleach that you're putting. It's three drops of bleach in a gallon of water. But however, when you have a 55-gallon water of storage that you've filled up from your garden hose, unless you put your proper amount of bleach in that 55-gallon drum, that water will become contaminated in time. So I'm going to give you, there's a whole list of per gallon, per jug, or per bottle, or 55 gallons. So I'm gonna put it in my presentation, and when it's sent to you guys, you will have a list of all of this, and including not just for the water, for how much food to storage, food to store, and what to have in your food storage that would make sense for long-term resiliency. So I will share that with you in the presentation as it comes to you.
I think also it would be a good family home evening activity just to taste that water so you get an idea. So get some water, put a few drops into it of the bleach and see what your kids think about it. If nothing else, it'll make them appreciate the water you have now. But maybe it won't be that hard for them and they'll get an idea and you can move forward with your plans.
Yes. Any other questions? Well, it's sure been great being with you. Thank you for this opportunity. And Lena and I enjoy it greatly when we share some of our talents with our family and friends, our neighbors, and you as our brothers and sisters. And let me give you this parting pledge. Those of you who don't know where we live, I'll share my address with you. If you need to have a one-on-one or you have some questions, you could email me or email Lena or come and see us. And again, just remember, this is a baby step. None of us are millionaires where we could go and buy a cellar worth of food storage and have it stored in 20 feet underground for it to maintain itself for 30 years. So we need to do it in baby steps. We need to use the food that we normally use and rotate it on periodic basis. Remember, conference comes twice a year, every 6 months. And it seems like every 6 months we have case lot sales. And then in my presentation, our presentation, we said that every 6 months you should review your plan. And that's when you also go down into your storage room and see what you need to replenish and what you need to bring forward so that you could use it and bring the new stuff and put it in the back. And by the way, this is the time everybody's having case lot sales. Thank you very much. And I testify to you that I know that the Lord is with us and He knows our hearts. He knows our needs. And He will never abandon us. But He gave us each other. And we are here for you. And I testify to you that the Savior gave us a prophet. President Nelson was not by accident is the prophet today. With his experience, with his intuitiveness, he knows what's coming next, and he's preparing us accordingly. I know without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus is the Christ, and this is his church, and his plan is perfect. We just need to follow his plan, baby steps, and help each other in time of need. And I leave you that testimony in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'm supposed to give the closing prayer, so I will do that now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Our Father in heaven, thank thee for all of the many blessings which we have, and we are so grateful for this Relief Society program and for the opportunities it affords us. And we're so grateful for this gospel and for thy son and both of your love for us. And we're so grateful for the Arslanians and for this wonderful knowledge that they have shared with us and their willingness to share and for their testimonies. And please bless us that we might act upon this and that it might become a key part of our lives. And we're so grateful for all of the blessings which thou hast given to us. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sisters.